Hey guys, welcome back to GTA Speedy. Today, we'll talk about Cyberpunk 2077, changed gaming, but not how we thought. Let's head into it. Number 4. Gigantic open world games are unsustainable. Cyberpunk 2077 is packed with side missions, small points of interest, and fine details that provide a lot to do for players. The only issue, when the game often feels like it's coming apart at the seams, immersion is impossible. A bug street that causes every passing car to plow into a barrier is one of the first things players see when exiting their apartment complex. The tip of the iceberg isn't even that. In recent years, open world games have become a go-to genre for major studios. In theory, for players in studios, a massive game filled with hundreds of hours of content is a win-win. Fans get more value for their $60, while studios get a base of long-tail players that could shell out more money several months or even years after the release for DLC or extra items. The only developer guilty of releasing an undercooked game is not CDPR. Ubisoft has released 3 massive open-world games with varying degrees of polish over the past 2 months alone. Watch Dogs Legion is so bug-ridden that Ubisoft delayed the online multiplayer of the game to 2021 in order to concentrate on the bug fixes. I found myself unable to progress further in Assassin's Creed Valhalla after an essential NPC dropped dead out of nowhere. The larger these games get, the more they become unstable. If the quality is lacking, is having bigger games worth it? There are some genuinely exciting story missions in Cyberpunk 2077 that play second fiddle to stupid bugs like naked T-posing characters. Bugs may be hilarious, but they're also a little sad. The developers have spent 8 long years working on this game. Slimming down the scale could help developers at a more realistic pace to create more focused games. Number 3. Crunch is unacceptable. Only months ago, CD Projekt Red had to face even more intense scrutiny towards the end of the development cycle of Cyberpunk 2077. The studio is colloquially referred to as crunch mode. It's exactly what it sounds like, and CDPR employees reportedly worked long hours, 6 days a week, to get the game out in time for its initial release in November, a date that was later pushed back 21 days after developers had put the extra time in. Crunch culture is, unfortunately, not new in the world of video games. Some form of crunch is imposed on many studios to ship games on time. Games such as Part 2 of The Last of Us and Red Dead Redemption 2 became infamous for troubling working conditions that created them. What appears to be a tone-deaf joke about the trend is even included in The Last of Us Part 2. Crunch contributes to widespread depression and anxiety. It is unhealthy for the industry as a whole, leading to burnout that causes people to flee the industry in droves. A 2019 report by Take This found that for 10 years or more, only 1/3 of developers remain in the industry, which could raise alarm bells for fans and producers alike. Recently, CD Projekt Red announced a plan to give a bonus to all employees that was previously dependent on high review scores, but that is too little too late. Moreover, to bring a project to the finish line, studios often rely on short-term contract employees. If those types of employees are eligible for a bonus, it's not clear. CD Projekt Red refused to comment on the request for clarification on the bonuses by Inverse, or whether the labor practices of the company would change in advance of the upcoming patches of the game. Where does this stop then? To hit the original November release date, the later December 10 date, developers had to crunch. Now, in January and February, CD Projekt Red is planning 2 major updates. It's fair to assume that staff will also work overtime to reach those deadlines. But what happens if there are more urgent problems with those game-altering fixes? Such vicious cycles don't raise the bar for the industry. They actively hold it back by hurting the talent on which it depends. Number 2. Major games need to embrace early access. Cyberpunk 2077 feels at times like it's in beta. There's a general lack of polish and a bug infestation. A companion drove me into a tense shootout on one mission. When I died, the game took me back to the driver's seat, in the driver's interior. Shipping a game in that state is not necessarily unacceptable, but it's essential to set the expectations of players accordingly. The early access label that smaller games use must be embraced by the biggest game studios. This year, in response to player feedback, we have seen titles like Ooblets and Rogue Legacy 2 offer a modest release strategy intended to test and evolve games. That's the same practice that, after extensive community feedback, helped Hades, quietly launched in 2018, become one of the best games of 2020. Even Fortnite, to great success, clung to the label for far longer than needed. Major studios have largely resisted early access, saving the label for free-to-play games. Ubisoft's Battle Royale game, Hyperspace, got the early access treatment, while Watch Dogs Legion debuted as an unfinished finished game. Early access adoption across the industry could go a long way towards managing player expectations and give developers a massive pool of live testers from which to collect data. Basically, Cyberpunk 2077 is in early access. So why does CD Projekt Red not just admit it? Number 1. Delays are okay. If we have been taught nothing else by Cyberpunk 2077, is that delays are not only acceptable, but preferable to a rushed final product. A gross overreaction from a small minority of toxic fans prompted each of the game's delays. But come launch day, none of those grievances seemed to hurt it financially. CD Projekt Red, one day after the game's launch, said the game had already recovered its developmental costs from pre-orders alone. Even after a longer than expected wait, gamers still showed up in droves. Cyberpunk 2077 was clearly rushed out to meet the year-end financial expectations, even with those delays. Ironically, that ended up hurting the bottom line of the business even more. In the wake of the glitchy release, the company's stock plummeted, reportedly causing its founders to lose $1 billion of wealth. That's not to mention the before Sony's stunning move to delist the game. Disgruntled players were already scrambling for refunds, both of which will cut deeply into the originally promising forecast of the game. No one benefits from a rushed game. It contributes to the crunching crisis of the industry, creates a short-sighted and risky financial game for investors, and leaves a subpar game for players. If modern development is going to become more sustainable, both studios and impatient players must come to terms with that fact. Had Cyberpunk 2077 been postponed for another 6 months, I might be writing about a game that raised the bar for the industry rather than walking headfirst into it. What do you think about Cyberpunk 2077? Do you agree that it changed gaming, though not in the way we expected it to? Let us know in the comment section. This brings us to the end of our video. I hope you enjoyed it, hit like if you did, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss any of our videos in the future. Also, watch the 2 videos that are on your screen because I'm sure you'll love them. With that, I'll see you in the next video.